Peace to everybody, back with another video. This is Judge Approves Plan to Retrieve Telegraph on Titanic that sent distress signals. So as you can see, here is part of the Titanic in the picture that has sank in 1912. And a lot of people have passed away at that time. A federal judge in Virginia has ruled that a salvage firm can retrieve the macaroni wireless telegraph machine that broadcasts distress calls from the sinking Titanic. So there was a judge in Virginia which has ruled that a salvage firm can retrieve the Marconi wireless telegraph machine that broadcasts distress calls. In other words, they would make distress calls to the other ships when they needed help. The order is a big win for RMS Titanic. The court recognized salver or steward of artifacts from the doomed ocean liner. So it was a big win for the RMS Titanic. The court recognized salver or steward of artifacts. So there was other artifacts that were on the Titanic too, and some of those have been retrieved already, but there's still more that people are looking for. More artifacts from 1912 and everything else. The Titanic was traveling from England to New York when it struck an iceberg and sank in 1912, killing about 700 of the 2,208 passengers and crew. So the Titanic was sailing from England to New York, so it was going on the right path. But then it struck an iceberg and sank in 1912, killing about 700 of the 2,208 passengers and crew. So 200 or 700 people were saved, but the rest were not saved, unfortunately. RMS Titanic, which recently emerged from bankruptcy, has said it plans to exhibit the telegraph with stories of the men who tapped out distress calls to nearby ships until seawater was literally laughing at their feet. So the RMS Titanic has been recently emerged from bankruptcy, so they saved the Titanic from being bankrupt. Has said it plans to exhibit telegraph with stories. So there's stories that are in there with the telegraph of the men who tapped out distress calls to nearby ships, which is the nearby ships are the Olympic, the sister ship of the RMS Titanic, and another one. Until seawater was literally laughing at their feet. So the people that were doing the tapping of the distress calls, all the water was laughing at their feet, so they knew something was happening, and they kept setting out distress calls for help. The brief transmission sent among those ships' wireless operators staccato bursts of information and emotion tell the story of Titanic's desperate fate that night. The confusion, chaos, panic, futility, and fear, the company wrote in the court filings. So there was a lot of chaos, panic, futility, and fear that the company wrote in court filings. So it was really scary time for the Titanic to be sinking in the Atlantic Ocean as it was on its way to New York. Of course, there was a lot of bursts of information and emotion that are telling the stories of Titanic's desperate fate that night. RMS Titanic submitted a 60-page plan to retrieve the telegraph, which is believed to still sit in a deck house near the doomed ocean liner's grand staircase. And you know how, I don't know how many of you have seen Titanic, but you've seen the grand staircase, how beautiful it is. It was the RMS Titanic submitted a 60-page plan to retrieve the telegraph. So there's like 60 pages of it, and which is believed to sit in a deck house near the doomed ocean liner's grand staircase. So if they're still there, the telegraph things, that they'll retrieve that as well. The company said an unnamed submersible would descend nearly 2.5 miles to the bottom of the North Atlantic, then slip through a skylight or cut the heavily corded roof in order to retrieve the radio. A suction dredge would remove silt, while many manipulator arms could cut electrical cords, it said. Yes, so you got this robot thing that will could cut the electrical cords. Also, there was descended nearly 2.5 miles to the bottom of the North Atlantic, so that's how far the RMS Titanic went. Then slipped through a skylight to cut the heavily corroded roof. Also, they could use a robot to do that. Okay. The proposed expedition has been controversial among some archaeological and preservation experts, and the firm may face more legal battles. So there's a proposed expedition that has been controversial. It was also some archaeological and preservation experts. The firm may face more legal battles, so it all depends on what legal battles they got, because they're still wanting to collect more artifacts from the Titanic at the bottom of the ocean. And it's not easy it's not an easy job to do, but they need to find out what is on that telegraph. And since the judge approved of it, so they can now know what is going on, what was said in those telegraphs. The U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which represents the public's interest in the wreck site, fiercely opposed the mission. It argued in court documents the telegraph is likely to be surrounded by the mortal remains of more than 1,500 people and should be left alone. Why should they leave it alone? People have a right to know what was said on those telegraphs. And now, by the mortal remains of more than 1,500 people and should be left alone? Why? The U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which represents the public's interest in the wreck site, fiercely opposes the mission. So now they want to oppose the mission, but the judge said it was okay to go and get the telegraph from the bottom of the ocean. And now you got people that are opposing it. It argued in court, so they want to argue this in court after the judge has said, well, yeah, you can go and get it. But in an order on money, U.S. District Judge Rebecca Beach Smith agreed that the telegraph is historically, culturally important, could soon be lost within the rapidly decaying wreck site. Yes, so the judge agreed to that order, that the telegraph is historically and culturally important and could soon be lost within the rapidly decaying wreck site. So the judge said, yeah, you can go and get it. We'll let you get the telegraph. We want to know what's on there, what stories were tell on there. So this is what the judge is saying. And here is the docking bridge where the telegraph was recovered from the wreckage of the Titanic. So they want to know what's on here and what stories were told on here. Smith wrote that recovering the telegraph will contribute to the legacy left by the indelible loss of the Titanic, those who survived and those who gave their lives in the sinking. Yeah, so that's what Smith wrote, that recovering the telegraph will contribute to the legacy. So it's a legacy that they have, that the people who survived and those who gave their lives in the sinking. So they did everything they could by writing these stories out. And this is what they wanted to know, what was on those. Smith is the maritime jurist who presides over Titanic salvage matters from a federal court in Norfolk. Her ruling modifies a previous judge's order from 2000 that forbids cutting into the shipwreck or detaching any part of it. So now you want to. So now there's a judge who is not going to allow this. Well, judge's order from 2000 that forbids cutting into the shipwreck or detaching any part of it. Well, first of all, that judge has no say in that one. But the other judge said, yeah, go ahead. We'll let you. So this is, and now they got to deal with this one judge saying, oh, you can't do that. Excuse me, people have a right to know what really happened. NOAA says the expedition is prohibited under federal law and an international agreement between the United Kingdom. Smith acknowledged NOAA's arguments, but said the only matter before the court was the previous order. So now the NOAA says the expedition is prohibited under federal law. Excuse me, but people do have a right to go to the Titanic site where the Titanic sank at, and are allowed to examine the ship that has sank. They're allowed to do that. But now the NOAA says the expedition is prohibited under federal law. What federal law? And an international agreement between the United and the United Kingdom. Well, we kind of figured the United Kingdom was going to be in the middle of this mess. Smith acknowledged NOAA's arguments, but said the only matter before the court was the previous order. So, in other words, I guess that order doesn't exist anymore, or whatever. I don't know. So, I mean, come on. Smith also wrote that the company's plane meets most requirements set forth in the international agreements and other restrictions. Those include justifying the expedition on significant and cultural grounds and considering damage to the wreckage. What damage? The ship has sank to the bottom of the ocean. It broke in half. The first half sank right away. The second half, it waited about, maybe 8 to 10 minutes before it sank. And now Smith also wrote that the company's plan meets most requirements set forth in an international agreement and other restrictions. So they just don't want nobody to go down there to examine the ship of what really happened. They want everything to be forbidden. Well, people are going to find it no matter what the outcome is. So who are they to say, oh, well, no, you can't go down there? What's wrong with people examining the ship? Hello? These people are, one judge says, yes, you can go and get the telegraph. But then you got somebody else is saying, oh, no, it's prohibited. In other words, forbidden. Huh? People, these people need to make up their minds what they want to do, because right now everything is all over the place, and the ship may be a landmark under the ground, under the water that the fishes could swim into and all that. But when you have divers, they do want to examine what happened. They are allowed to do that. The one judge can't say, "Oh, well, you can't do that." Huh? I mean, seriously, come on. Can we get a little real here? I mean, seriously, people need to know what has happened to the ship and why. And people need to know what was on that telegraph, what stories were on there. That's what they need to know. Leave your comments below. I am out.